Sounds good.
And Dr. Mahajan just joined us. Excellent to have you here, Dr. Mahajan. So Karla, Dr. Mahajan is the Associate Dean for the Graduate Programs Office. More importantly, he's my boss.
Well, very nice to meet you.
and of course, Karla is our very special guest today. We're so fortunate to have you, Karla. I'm going to go ahead, if it's okay, I'll go ahead and I'll introduce you. Karla Trotman is the President and Chief Executive Officer at Electrosoft Incorporated, an electronics manufacturing and engineering firm in the United States. She holds a BS in Business Logistics from Penn State University and an MBA from Drexel University. She also has worked from the perspective of her work experience. She's had key positions in Honeywell, The Gap, and IKEA. In fact, actually, while she was at IKEA, she became the mother of 2 sons. And actually, during her maternity leave, she established Belly Button Boutique, a company that she took off and basically expanded over 8 years, including celebrity and international clientele. She was featured on a variety of national media related to her business as well. The success of her boutique, which she'll talk about, was an indicator, obviously, of her ability to expand her horizons and affect change across multiple industries. ESI, she saw her success in navigating both the online space of business and logistics as an opportunity to propel ESI, Electrosoft, obviously. ESI was established by her parents, Jim and Sheila Wallace, in 1986, and is the largest African-American electronics contract manufacturing and engineering firm in the United States. Karla exited corporate America with her sights focused on ESI. Over the past 10 years, she served in the roles at ESI as Special Projects and Marketing Manager, Executive Vice President, Chief Operating Officer, and currently as the Chief Executive Officer. Later, I'm going to ask Karla just to elaborate on some of the organizations that are important to her and some different things that she's involved in outside of her role as CEO. But without further ado, I do want to just hand it over to Karla to maybe just welcome and to say maybe a few words quickly.
Well, thank you so much for that amazing intro. I sound very official and have a lot of titles, and I appreciate that. And I have a headset on because in my facility, there's a lot of noise. So I look like remember the Time Life book operator. So I just want to make sure that everyone is able to hear me over the sounds of the company and the heater. So thank you so much for being here. I am humbly grateful for your presence.
Yeah, well, it's great to have you, Karla. And I love your background too, as well. It's truly like we're in a museum. So that's quite nice.
Yes, I've been stealing backgrounds from the Museum of the African Diaspora in San Francisco because their images are so crisp, and I just really love African American art.
Yeah, it's very nice. Mm-hmm. I think it was slightly a different one the last time I talked with you a few weeks ago.
Yes. I told you I'm stealing them, all of them.
That's great. So Karla, I want to start off by asking you, what does your typical day look like as a CEO/mom?
Well, I'm not really a morning person, but every day I'm trying to get up earlier and earlier. I have 2 boys that are in school online. They are in the 7th and 9th grade, and we moved during COVID. So we really don't have a rhythm yet. We're kind of in a disarray. Somebody every day is supposed to walk the dog. Now that somebody's either one son or the other. So I started giving them alerts that will pop up on their phone so they know who's to wake up with the dog. Take him out so that the rest of us can get ready. But they just go downstairs, do their work. I go off to the office. My husband is home with the dog. He's an attorney. And I come into the office, do the normal check email, but say hello, like everyone, I'm here if you need me. And A lot of it, I've learned to not check email first. I learned to shoot email out because I don't want to come into my day doing the bidding of others. I would rather them start the ball of the things that I need them to do across whatever aspect of business I'm doing at the time. And for the most part, the day since COVID hit, it's just been trying to really look at each day strategically. Normally, I would just be in my office doing whatever, but there seems to be a lot of like little fires always going on, trying to figure out if we're going to get our PPP paperwork filed for forgiveness, if we're going to how our new marketing platform's working, because we had to put that up. And so every day it's a new little bit, it's a new challenge every single day. But
Excellent.
I mean, my day is boring pretty much.
Ah,
Go
I,
work
I
and
somehow
come home.
found that.
But I do have a
um,
fun little hobby. My 12-year-old wants to be a chef, so twice a week we get these little meal kits. Once a week, then twice a week we cook, and that's the only way I will cook is with him.
wow, that's great. I'm glad I don't have to do that. I'd like to know, I'm so curious, what led you to create the Belly Button Boutique? Such an interesting idea.
So when I was working full time, I was pregnant, and I thought that pregnancy was going to be this wonderful, great thing. And I actually had a really difficult pregnancy, and I thought it was awful. I was uncomfortable, and then I had other health concerns and issues. But because I have a background in supply chain logistics, I was able to find and identify products across the world that people said were helpful. And so I would get all these products in and try them out, and it really did help with my pregnancy and make it a lot more comfortable, and even postpartum. And amongst my friends, I found out that they were asking other people to ask them, like, well, I'm uncomfortable, what should I do? Because at that time period, nobody's talking about pregnancy, not like, there's stores and products everywhere. Then people would go on chat rooms and discussion boards and talk about their pains. And so I decided to use my background and create almost like just a website interface where I would curate the products for pregnant women who were uncomfortable or having difficult pregnancy and postpartum. And then those products were coming from women who developed products but didn't have distribution. So I didn't really physically bring in any of the products. I only had the interface for people to buy the products, and they would ship directly from the moms that had created them or the businesses directly to the pregnant woman or postpartum woman. And, obviously celebrities also get pregnant and have uncomfortable pregnancies, and it became a site for a lot of them started coming through the business, as well as women from overseas. So we had probably about, at the time, around 20 different countries that we were shipping to for women who needed products, who were uncomfortable. And I still had my full-time job, and I still had two little kids.
Wow, to do all that, that's quite something. I was under the impression that was the sort of the only thing you were doing was, that business to do it all. Wow, that's saying something. I'm curious, how did Electrosoft, ESI, how did it get started? And what was the landscape for the business at that time?
So when I was young, my father actually has a degree in engineering and a master's in computer science. And he was the director of engineering for a company, and they pretty much pulled everyone in and got rid of them. And they said you could work for 6 months under the premise that it's easier to find a job if you have a job, or you can take your money and leave. And so he took the money, and what ended up happening is that people would call him and ask him to build cables for some of the work that they were doing prior. And the cables everyone thought they were great, and so he did more. Brought somebody in that used to work for him, and I would come home from school, cut wire for 10 cents an hour and help build these cables in the kitchen. And then someone else said, hey, we want some more of these great cables. And my mom said, awesome, but you got to get out of the kitchen. So we went to the garage, and then it's winter started to come, and we moved to an incubator, and what was supposed to just be a short-term project ended up becoming a 34-year journey. Now, during the time, though, my dad did have he brought on a partner. He was really great in sales. My dad is very great. He was the engineer, more operational person. And so they put in their own money to start this business. So a lot of times you hear a lot about venture capital and bank equity and all that, but they put in themselves. And my dad being African American and his business partner being white, oftentimes people thought that my dad worked for this gentleman and would assume that he was the head guy, and he's such a great partner. He was like, nope, he's the brains behind it all. And so in that lesson, I learned at a very young age the assumptions that people make about you in business.
That's pretty incredible. I'm so curious. So here you are. You're working in the garage. You're working in the kitchen. You're doing these wires. I mean, you're young. At any point did you see yourself actually like running this company?
No, no. In my mind, I think most people think that once they leave school or college or what have you, that they want to have this like great job that pays you a lot of money. In my mind, I was like dressing really well and taking the train into the city and flying all over the place. And, working at a bench building electronics just was the polar opposite of what I thought. And that's the route that I took. I pursued my own thing, and my parents never pressured me to doing it. And I have two brothers as well, and there was never any pressure to go into electronics. I mean, at one point I was a trained dancer, and my dad said, you're a really great dancer, but you're expensive and you like nice things. So you might want to think about a position that's going to be able to support you long term. So that's either going to be in business or engineering. And so I knew I did not want to be an engineer, and started really focusing on business and went that route.
So I'd like to know then, what was the catalyst that changed your mind about kind of, going back and, eventually obviously taking over and running the company?
I think that it was working for other people for a long period or a great period of time, and seeing that. I said to one friend, I was like, I feel like I could die in my office chair and they would just roll me down the hall and replace me. And I said, that's pretty much a defeating feeling for anybody who wants to make an impact in the world. I felt like I was overly prepared and overly educated for corporate America, that I was prepared to do amazing, wonderful things that my college had prepared me to do. And really, organizations are just so big, your impact is not really felt immediately. There's a lot of meetings after meetings. We have to have a meeting about the meeting. A lot of red tape, a lot of things that I just didn't see going on in my family business. When I would come home from college, my dad would say, hey, I need you to, get our company ISO certified, some crazy thing. And then I would just have to figure it out and get it done. Now, you don't get to do that working for XYZ company. I think of that movie Office Space. They need you to file the TPS reports. That's what's important in that. And then something else dawned on me, especially when I had children. I got tired of flying around and doing the things that I thought I was going to love. I wanted to be able to read to my son's class. I wanted to be able to, again, like I said, make an impact. And then there's this thing called legacy that became extremely important to me. No matter how big my job got, if I was like the CEO of a Fortune 50 company, I couldn't leave my job to my kids. But what I could leave to them is an entity, a business. And that's when I realized that's what my parents had done. They created this entity that could transition from one generation to the next. So I needed to look at it as a serious opportunity to do that. And so I woke up one day and I saw that small business is extremely lucrative. It's very counter to what you learn in school and what you hear in the news and what you've read about. Small business employs most people that work. Small business contributes the most to GDP. They're just not part of the markets. It's privately held money. And it can create a lifestyle for you beyond what you dreamed for yourself working for someone else. And so it took a while for me to open my eyes to that.
Yeah, no doubt about it. That's really a great story. I'm curious, what hurdles were in the way, to all of this happening for you?
Well, I had hurdles throughout my career. One was that being in supply chain logistics as a woman of color, it was very difficult. I was usually the only person of color, or very few women. And so my expertise was often challenged because the assumption is that I'm an affirmative action hire as opposed to actually earning the job or being the most qualified candidate, which is always tough to overcome. But I've learned that I don't have to do anything but just be who I am and act like I'm supposed to be there because I am. And that's everyone else's issue and not mine. But it does wear on your mind that people are constantly challenging your level of intelligence and your ability to do the job at hand. And then when you do succeed, it has to be some anomaly, right? And so that type of pressure coupled with the regular pressures of work is just, it's a consistent thing. And then, as you've been hearing, a lot of times you can't bring your whole self to work. I was like my Karla work self, but then around my friends, I was, who I was. And to make that conscious decision that I'm going to be the same person all the time, it's like you really cannot, for example, like your hair, like Black women constantly worry about their hair. Am I going to be able to wear my hair natural and it not be an issue? Because it's always like, oh, your hair is so fluffy. Can I touch it? It's like, how many other people's hair are you touching in this building? Right. Then there's other issues of like when I would travel to countries that were not exactly welcoming to people of color. And I had to tell my manager, like, I'm not going back there by myself. Like, it's not safe. And those are things that I realized at some point that I had an option. And I think that's another reason why women of color are the highest demographic leaving corporate America, is that we put up with a lot of things in the workplace, microaggressions. I mean, some of the worst managers I had were actually other women, white women, that were extremely hard for me to work with. And I'm not the only. If there were a lot of stories of that, and it's probably one of the biggest causes for women of color leaving corporate America and becoming entrepreneurs. So thankfully, I did have a family business, and when I looked at my options, that I could do my own thing, or I could expand on something that's proven and already doing well, and that's what I chose.
Wow, that's quite something. I wanted to ask you, so share with us a little bit about what you all at Electrosoft actually manufacture.
Okay, so think of like an iPhone, right? It's created in California, but Apple doesn't own any manufacturing facilities. They actually outsource their manufacturing to a company called Foxconn in Asia. And Foxconn has their manufacturing contract and builds all of their phones. They also have, Foxconn has contracts with television companies like Samsung or um, Sony or what have you. I'm not sure who they have contracts with, but just for example. And so they have multiple industries that they build for. Now, why is that a good idea? Now, think about how expensive it is to buy equipment, machinery, have people, pay them not just a salary, but benefits, insurance on manufacturing. Everything that goes, it's almost like its own separate entity. If you're able to cut that cost entirely and get someone to give you a landed price for a product and they're doing it on a consistent basis and they're part of your supply chain, it allows them to be able to, that's one cost that they don't have to manage internally. And so we are like Foxconn for a lot of industrial companies. So we're not business to consumer, we're business to business. So companies come to us and say, hey, we have this giant industrial machine and we need you to do the cables for it, the wire harnesses, which are just complex cable assemblies, the printed circuit board assembly work, and or maybe it's the enclosure. I call it the brains and central nervous system of any electronic device. We build it. They send us their drawings. We know just from our expertise where to buy the product at the best price and how long it's going to take, because all of our assemblers do custom work. We build everything in-house, so we don't ship it out. Everything's done in-house. And we do this 4 areas: the wires, the wire harnesses, wire harnesses, enclosures, and printed circuit board. An enclosure is just a giant box, or it could be a smaller box with the printed circuit board in it, with the cables in it. And those devices are in probably every electronic device that you own personally. If you open up your television, you have a board in there and you have cables because you use it to plug it into the wall. And there's probably cables that run throughout. You look at your phone has the same thing, like your desk phone. You probably don't even have phones anymore and you're just cell phones, but I'm looking at my desk phone and there's a board in it for sure. And there's cables in it as well. But the types of devices that we build go into automated guided vehicles, which is what are used in warehousing situations to build cars, to move pallets. They're in medication delivery devices at hospitals. We do wiring for Patriot missiles and landmines for Department of Defense. Everything that runs on with electronics is something that we can build, but it's always done in an industrial capacity. So we do work for about 50 different companies, depending on what their workflow is and how busy they may get, but we're constantly bringing on new clients. And some of them are doing some incredible things, like with lithium batteries, because batteries, that people are trying to change everything over to battery powered or electric, and it helps with energy consumption. And so that's becoming a huge thing, especially those automated guided vehicles, because you can't get people to work in technical environment anymore. Nobody's going to tech school. So everything is automation. And so you have these vehicles zipping around warehouse facilities and doing the work that we can't find people to do on a daily basis. So it's an incredible, the projects are amazing that we're working on.
Wow. Well, I want to share with everyone, like how you and I, in a sense, connected.
Yes.
Actually, I was on LinkedIn and I came across a story about you, Karla, and about how you led your company. It was something, actually, I think it was actually something that I had found. It was something that I think that Susan Packard, obviously one of our recent speakers, co-founder of HGTV, had liked one of your stories or something along those lines. And that's what made me see it. And I read it. And I was just taken back by how you led your organization pivot, during the whole COVID and your response to COVID and so forth. And I'd love for you to just share briefly how you all, sort of just, made that pivot to help the community and so forth.
Sure. So I don't know how I met Susan, but she's been a great friend to me for a couple of years. And she heard about what I was doing and told everybody, because she's an amazing lady. That's just what she does. She spreads goodness and cheer everywhere. Um, so in my area, I live outside of Philadelphia, and we have a lot. We're known for the eds and meds education facility organizations and colleges, and then lots of hospitals and hospital systems. And I saw that the frontline workers were posting pictures of themselves with sandwich containers over their faces, and they were taping trash bags around themselves for PPE. And I thought, I knew I have friends who their spouses are doctors, and they're like, we're sending our spouses out, and they may catch this because they have sandwich container over their face. And I thought, geez, we are contract manufacturers. I know, like, we're a solution provider. I know we can do better than that. Um, and so, I mean, we didn't have access to the materials that would be used in a normal sense, but we repurposed products found at like office supply stores and hardware stores, and started creating face shields and sending them to hospitals and nurses that we knew, because we weren't trying to sell them, so we didn't have to go through the normal channels. We were just like, take these with you, use this instead of a sandwich container. And the posts from and the thank yous that they received were tremendous. And then what ended up happening was a friend of mine who, she is, I don't know if you're familiar with family offices, but they pretty much are really, really, really rich people, have lawyers, they have people who run their money, they have people who do all these things. So she helps this like really, really rich families foundation. And they saw what we were doing and they said, hey, we want to put money behind it. How much will it cost for, if we gave you $10,000 to do, how much would it, how many could you do? We have some places that we know of that we'd like to send more face shields. And in the end, we ended up doing about 15,000 face shields in that month and sending them across 3 different states to help frontline workers during that time period fill the gap. Because again, these are not like something you would really, really want to go into surgery with. But if you have nothing, um, they provided them that bridge during that time. And so that was, yeah, that was what we did for the entire month of April, was we put everything aside and built face shields for frontline workers.
That's amazing. I mean, honestly, the country really is indebted to companies like yours that have done these kinds of these kinds of services to community and to fellow citizens. I mean, it's truly remarkable. I'm curious if would you mind just maybe touching base a little bit on just COVID's impact on your business overall?
So we're in a pretty good, well, good is relative, right? Um, Position that because I have so many different companies across various sectors, all industrial, but like automotive, defense, we are considered essential. So we had to be open. I've only been closed down for 1 day. So we had to stay open. I'm a part of a CEO group that I actually pay to be a part of. And we stayed in contact. So that was like, 15 people having their ear to the ground, pulling information together. Every single one of us got PPP funding because of um, that network and that sharing. Um, my, um, I mean, I actually have lost a couple of employees. One, one woman, she had small children and she could not, when it was time to go back to school, and she couldn't manage everything as a single mom. She came to me with no work experience whatsoever, and we've trained her over almost 10 years. And she had to move to South Carolina to be with her mother to get help during this time period. I had an employee who came down with COVID from her husband. And someone was riding into work with her. And these are hourly employees. So it's not like they've got 6 months salary saved to do much of anything. It's extremely impactful. And you do what you can to try to support everyone. And so for me, it was thinking as a mom, is my kids are of age where they could stay home if they needed to, but a lot of people had young children and couldn't. Um, I know that we've had we're down about 25% in revenue, which can be huge, but thankfully, I had a cash cushion, which is huge. What businesses should have. You need to have a cash cushion to be able to react in those times. I don't understand how some businesses can't react from, um, okay, sorry. I don't know how some people can operate huge businesses and need government bailouts when they expect small businesses to survive for a year, what it seems like it's going to be a year being shut down. Like, that's crazy. So that's why I consider ourselves extremely blessed. We're conservative with our cash. Um, I made the first thing that they tell you when you're in business, right, is when you're in a bad situation is how, when you do conserve money and you cut your spending, one of the first things you do is cut marketing expense. Now, I did the complete opposite. I invested in marketing, mainly because I recognized the opportunity with another pandemic, which is racial injustice that had come up, and people started looking for businesses of color and women-owned businesses to do business with. So I made the investment there, recognizing the opportunity. But I also saw that with spending during this time period, companies were trying to retool themselves, looking at a different supply chain and trying to find stateside supply chain partners. And so everyone that thought, yay, let's go to Asia and buy everything and have huge margins, couldn't get anything over from China and Southeast Asia. So now they are resorting to really looking at a stateside supply chain. So showing people that you can still buy things in America and they're not super expensive. But COVID was a sobering time for a lot of businesses, especially minority-owned businesses, being that 40% will be closing due to COVID. And so, yeah, I count myself blessed every single day that we're still able to fully pay everyone that has worked for us and keep the lights on and still continue to pay 60% of their health insurance and contribute to their 401ks.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. And you kind of you mentioned about racial injustice. I wanted to touch base on that just a bit, because certainly we've heard a lot in the news recently about just institutional racism and so forth. So I wanted to ask you, people of color experience institutional racism when it comes to banking and business. What has your journey been like, Karla, with respect to this?
I, again, am on a different side than most. Being second generation business owner in our 34th year and I've always had great credit. We were fiscally conservative and the business has always had great credit. So I can walk in and ask for 7 figures and no one will flinch. It's not an issue. I have people that would like to give me money or want me to run the business. But I also know that same with companies putting out Black Lives Matter statements, Black Lives Matter statements, and really not backing them up with showing how they make a difference and how they matter. That I've tried to make that concerted effort on my side. There are no that I've seen to date stocking distributors that are minority owned of electronic components. So the way that I look at my supplier diversity is I can decide to who I'm going to do business with. And if it's a bank, this bank, I've turned away banks because they have participated in using slaves as collateral when the United States was created. So if that bank had been a part of that, I choose to not do business with them. I don't do business with banks that participate in predatory lending in minority communities. I don't. I mean, sometimes they are the better choice financially from a business perspective, but that's my social agenda. That's how I feel better about doing something for my community, because I feel that I have a different, I feel like I'm at the table to fight for those who can't be there. And when companies, like insurance companies want to be our provider, I ask them, well, how diverse is your management structure? And how diverse is your board? Because I don't see any people of color, nor do I see any women. And they say, oh, is that a necessity? And I say, well, shouldn't it be? Um, if I don't ask, who's going to ask? If my fellow women aren't going to ask, who's going to ask? If other people of color aren't ask, it's not going to be important to them. So if it's important to me, I would like for it to be important to the companies that I do business with. And I think that's how we force change. We don't sit back and hope that it will happen. But when they come back again this next year and they say, hey, you know, your insurance renewal is coming up, we'd like to give it a second look. I'd say, oh, well, how are you doing with your diversity efforts? Oh, you've done nothing? It's like, well, I really don't think we have anything to talk about because I think you know where I stand on this. So, so it's become very, very important for those of us who are able to make change to show people why it's important. And that's what I've chosen to do.
Excellent. I'd like to know, what's the future hold in store for Electrosoft and you personally. Also, maybe you could just share a little bit about some of the things that are from an organization standpoint, or you shared a little bit about what's important to you, but just maybe some purpose that are important to you.
So I'm probably overly involved and overly committed on too many boards, but mainly because, like, right now, the both universities that I had attended, I'm helping one on their anti-racism task force, as well as sitting on their board of governors and speaking to issues of racism and white supremacy specifically. I know it sounds like very, very heavy, but those words I'm using those words to honestly describe things like the awards that we give to alumni. Our alumni awards for entrepreneurs, when I look at a stack of them and I see, when I look at them and really need to delineate, that most of them are piles of white men and then minorities. And the white men are very heavily funded companies, and the minorities are running their businesses with like no money. And I say, how can we give an entrepreneur award? The white gentlemen obviously have fantastic companies, they're VC backed, but these minority companies in their descriptions have said that they can't even get financing. And we know that of the $86 billion that were given to from venture capitalists, 3% went to Black companies. That's ridiculous. That's indicative of systemic racism. So now we need to look at how we, as an organization, as a university, give awards to people while also saying we are anti-racist. So that's the way that I'm really trying to put voice behind the anti-racism work that the schools that I'm a part of, they say they want to do, and how you put it in and make it make sense. So that's like that one side of what I'm doing. The other side for Electrosoft, I'd like to continue growing at this, like at accretive growth, looking at purchasing it. I acquired one business 3 years ago. I'd like to acquire a few more in the next couple of years to continue growth. I do a lot of work with children of abuse. And when they come through the system, they end up becoming victims of human trafficking. So I'm trying to work with a program that, because we can't find people in technical skills, that in the technical environment, that we then take them into a program that we've developed so that they can get the skills to work in manufacturing. So I'm trying to, again, finish piecing together that so that we can have a pipeline and hopefully try to not have that become part of their life, that they then have a career to look forward to once they age out of the system. And then hopefully I have built a company that my children will continue, if they don't run it, that we create a family board that they can still be able to gain equity from the business, and that it will live on and continue the work that was started by my father 34 years ago.
That's very cool. I'm going to look forward to following the success of your company for sure, Karla.
Thank you, Richard.
So Karla, I gotta ask the question.
Okay.
What advice would you give to your 20-something, your 20-something self And maybe if you could share, kind of a little bit of advice for our full-time MBAs and MS business students that are on right now.
Okay, so I thought about this because I really thought about what piece of advice that I heard that really impacted me. And that was be kind to yourself, because I feel like you come out of school and you have to know where you're going, what you're doing, what job you have, where you're going to live, and all of these things. And I tell you, I've reinvented myself and the direction in which I was going at least like 4 or 5 times throughout the course of my life. There was one point where I thought I was going in one direction. It didn't turn out the way that I wanted it. I was devastated. I thought that everyone was going to leave and surpass me on the success continuum. And then I went a different direction. And then when that didn't work out the way that I wanted it to, I reinvented and went a different direction. I didn't go back to graduate school to get my MBA until I graduated when I was 39 with my MBA. And I had 2 kids, and I would pick them up from school, and we would sit at the dining room table, and one would color, the other would do their kindergarten homework, and I would do my insane statistics homework. And it got to the point where even my little one would sit on my lap, and we would read business cases together. And he started getting into them and asking questions about it, which was a great time to spend money or spend time together without spending a lot of money. But it was because I knew that it was never too late to change the direction in which you went ahead. And I don't think I'm done. I mean, I have in my mind something else I want to do. So I think if you give yourself grace and allow your plans to kind of happen the way that you see them and the way you want it and feel your way there, you will be fine in the end. It's not a race.
That's excellent. Great advice. Before we get to some questions that are in the chat already, everyone's excited to ask you a few questions. I did want to mention, I get asked a lot of times, like how I'm able to bring on such incredible speakers like you, Karla. And, often it's because of incredible speakers like you. And Karla has already reached out to me and already referred one of her friends. Shelly Archambault will be on in January. And Shelly is the first Black female CEO in Silicon Valley. She's now on the boards of Verizon, Nordstrom. So she'll be with us in January, but it's because of people like Karla who are so kind and share their, network. And, that's what it's all about, right, Karla?
Absolutely. The more people you can talk to, it gets your mind going in the directions that you never thought. So I think you're going to really enjoy listening to Shelly in January.
No doubt. So Ryan Staples, one of our full-time MBAs, asks, what paradigms have you had to overcome as an African-American female leader? What advice would you give to future leaders to avoid causing the scenarios that you had to overcome?
So I guess are you asking from a perspective? I guess I just want a clarifying question. How would people of color overcome it, or how should white people overcome that?
I think it's that, but Ryan, you want to chime in, Ryan?
Yeah, so I guess my question is, how can I, as a white leader, avoid causing heartache for a person of color in the future, as a future leader?
I love that question. So I think right now there's a lot of tools available for anti-racism. I would think educating yourself at first about racism, white supremacy. When I say white supremacy, people automatically think it's like KKK hood and tiki torches, but white supremacy being the structure in which America was created in 1776, and how everything is related to and created around white men. So you have to think about that structure and under which everyone lives. Okay. So I would definitely suggest you read Ibram X. Kendi, The History of Racism. I would suggest you read, obviously, Robin DiAngelo, and then I'm trying to think who else. Those are some good starts. And then there's one book that's So You Want to Talk About Race is a very good book as well to get, and they all kind of converge under the idea, the premise that like people aren't inherently bad. We're just used to living under a set of circumstances that has created a paradigm where Black people are on the low end and white people are on the upper end. If you're able to understand that and navigate it and do the work and be an ally, or what they call an accomplishment, because an ally is somebody like, yay, I'm there for you. An accomplice is like, let's go get some work done. So if you're more an accomplice in that and willing to do the work and are cognizant of the inherent biases that exist, I think that would make you that's going to make you a fantastic leader, in just understanding people and just really taking the time to get to know the people that work for you. I mean, I think of myself with the people that I lead. We had an exercise in the beginning of meetings where I asked them something innocuous, but like in depth. So one question was, what was your first job? And my one supervisor, she's a Vietnamese woman, and she said she came here to America, didn't speak any English. She was 18, too old to go to high school and learn English. So she worked very, very hard, and she didn't understand why people don't work as hard as she does. And she is like an insanely amazing hard worker, but she's so like intense that people were like, what is wrong with this woman? Well, it's because she's seen a different life, right? And I think if you know that about her, then you're more understanding in why she's the way that she is. And it doesn't come out in normal everyday, hi, how are you doing? So if you're in that situation where you can ask people like those types of innocuous yet in-depth questions, I think it's extremely beneficial and helpful in knowing people, who they are, and treating people with that individual respect that they all deserve. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, that's a great question, Ryan. Kirk asks, are you able to share a bit on your participation in the neighborhood assistance program and how, along with helping the community, it was a sound business decision as well?
So as far as the face shields neighborhood assistance, I'm asking
Kirk?
Yes, well, as far as how you got involved, and there actually were tax credits a couple of years ago where you could help the neighborhood community, and then the state also, basically you donated $5,000. For every $5,000 you donated, you got $3,200 worth of tax credit.
So I've never done that.
You helped the community along the way. So it's from a couple of years ago, something I read about. I thought was pretty cool.
So they have it now, and so from a PA perspective, my tax liability is really low as a manufacturer because we create things and then we send them. So we're almost like a middleman. But I donate money, but not for a tax credit, or have never participated in that program, because from what I understand, there's certain charities that are involved in it. So the charities have to apply to be a part of that program. And then you have to donate money to those particular charities. And it's a lot of back and forth. Our organization, we have like the charities that we deal with are with like hunger or education. And we have relationships with them, but I know that they do exist. I've not done it to date, but the ones that I deal with right now, the charities are just checks being written with no credit given back. But I do love the program. I think it's amazing. It does help people make decisions to help charities that they normally wouldn't, even if it's a quid pro quo.
Great, thanks. Actually, one of our guests today wants to say hello to you, Karla. It appears that you've helped her over the years with research. Priyanka, did you want to say something?
Hi, Karla. So great to meet you again.
Hi, how are you?
Very well. I have to tell my Maze family here, So I did my PhD from Penn State University, and as a graduate student, when I was collecting dissertation data, because my research looks at gender diversity and minority executives, particularly focusing on female CEOs, I reached out to Karla as a part of my dissertation data collection to see if she would help me with developing some insights on female leaders. And Karla, you have been, you shared your inspirational story with me, and it really helped me translate my ideas into a research paper that is just going to be published in the coming next months in one of
Oh,
the top journals.
wow.
So thank you so much. I really appreciate your story. You were an amazing leader, and I know how the challenges that you've faced in being who you are. So hats off to you, and I'm so glad that you're here participating in this speaker series. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Oh, that's so good to hear. Can you send it to me when it's published?
I will
I
absolutely.
can't wait to read it.
Forthcoming.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much, Karla.
Thank you.
That's
Oh,
such a
that's so
cool
nice.
story. I had no idea about this. And when I hear like the whole connection, I got the goosebumps listening to that. That was
Oh, I did too.
that was really cool. Thanks for sharing that, Priyanka.
Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you.
So Sabrina has a question. Can you give any advice to folks that work in family-run businesses? Example, how do you keep it civil at Thanksgiving dinner when there's tension at work?
Oh God. So I think that I must have like our family's like, we joke a lot, okay? Like morbid humor, okay? We're terrible jokesters, almost mean, okay? So our business is not something people even want to hear about around us in our family. They don't even like to talk about it. So one thing that we do is with my brothers, for example, I have to send them correspondence so that they can read it instead of hearing it differently. So that's one like little rule that we have. So if I say, I'm writing to you as the owner and president of this business, I need you to do this because of this. Now, as your sister, and then I tell them, this is ridiculous, so on and so forth. And then I will CC a parent on there so that the only reason why I do that is because I really don't need my mom and dad calling me, asking me, so now they've gotten it, the communication. And it sounds crazy. Like you're never going to escape being the daughter or the sister. You'll forever be 12. They will forever think of you in that way. But that's family business. But also your relationships are different. Like my relationship with my dad is like, I think we're close, but we're almost too businessy when it comes to things. So I think people underestimate the issues that you have in a family business are different from the issues that you have in a corporate setting. So the tension that you may have with your boss or your manager, imagine having that with your parent or sibling, and then how it translates over. So one great thing we did is establish family meetings. So every month we would come together and go through some of the issues of the business. I knew that there was a steep learning curve for my brothers because they did not have a business background or the experience. So I tried to gently bring them through that, and so that everyone was on the same page. During those meetings, my dad also pulled out his will and explained, we read through the will so that everyone understood what his wishes were in advance, so there was no interpretation. Because it's like, well, I think daddy meant this. Well, I think daddy meant this. So we just asked him, what does this mean? And that was extremely helpful for us to understand the direction he decided he wanted the company to go in. So now there's no family tension because we have that mechanism of feedback and open discussion. And then there's nothing left to interpretation. So I think those meetings allow you to open your mouth and everyone to open their mouths. So don't let the sun set on those types of things when you need clarity. and where the business is going. And I think it's like that movie, that TV show Succession on Showtime. Like nobody knows who Dab's going to leave the business to, and he's like messing with everyone. That can sometimes in people's minds they think that they are the chosen one. A same thing. A friend of mine thought she was the chosen one for her father's business, and he had someone else in mind. So those meetings become imperative when you're looking at the future and succession plans in general. So I definitely wish you luck. I would tell you to also get with another group or a family business group so that you can work through some of the issues, because I would never try to reinvent the wheel. They do have tools in place and organizations in place to help you. And I do wish you luck.
That's great. We have one more question. I just want to ask you though quick, does Dad still get involved?
My dad plays golf every Monday. He travels probably 150 days out of the year.
Wow.
He comes in every once in a while, asks a few questions, and then leaves. He's not, he's here, but I've been running the company for 3 years anyway, so it wasn't like a new thing. But he's really learning to let go. And I think that's the beauty. Now, let me tell you, he didn't get there by himself. I had to bring in experts to help me get him to realize that it was time to go. My dad, when he was 70, I said, I hate to tell you this, but you're not middle-aged. A lot of people don't live to 140. So it's time to start moving to the next step. I'm not saying you're old. I'm just saying, let's just think about the next step. And that's when he was more agreeable to getting help to moving forward with the business. So, I mean, I think that's hard for people who started something and need to let go. It's hard to think that you're getting old or older. I know I have a hard time with it myself. With every long gray streak that comes out of my head, it's hard. So you don't want to think about that, but it helps when you can pull in professionals. And he's actually been very, very great and kind throughout this process, which I did not expect. I thought he was going to be a monster and a nightmare. So you never know what you're going to get.
That's great. So Aaliyah, one of our MS business students, wants to ask, she says, as a lower level employee in a company that does not explicitly address or accept social changes, movements, how can we bring attention to these issues respectfully, especially if it's something we're passionate about?
So usually the social injustice issues fall under human resources. So I don't know how big the company is, but a good human resource professional will be able to help guide those types of situations in your organization. I'm surprised that in this day and age that they haven't. And I would be interested in understanding the core values and mission of the company that you work for. I mean, eventually you get to the point in your career that it's not just getting hired, like I need a job, somebody hire me, please. It's I need a job that fits me. And so when you walk into the interview, it's not just them interviewing you, but you interviewing them, seeing if they're a good fit for you. And if you are at that point that, low level, I think you need all levels, quite honestly. And if even the low level feels that it's necessary, that if a good company should listen to you and would listen to you, if your company's not listening to you, then and you're uncomfortable, you might need to look elsewhere at a company, which is hard because I know we're in a difficult employment cycle. But it's easier to find a job when you have a job. And good employees are very hard to find. So I hate to tell you to just leave. But I think that if the company is not willing to change and it doesn't align with your core values, then it may not be the company for you.
Yeah, she said, thank you. Yeah, I was in an interview and they had alluded the company was not explicitly addressing these kinds of social injustices. I think this is a good sign to head a different direction.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
look,
I don't know. I could work there, but yeah.
Yeah, probably it's probably better to seek other opportunities, most likely.
Mhm.
Well, look, it was a real pleasure having you on, Karla. I mean, I'm thinking that the audience probably feels the same way as I. It was a really pleasant discussion with you, talk with you.
Well, it was wonderful spending my evening with you all. Thank you so much for your questions. Thank you for listening. I appreciate. Oh, was that for me? Oh, not for you. That's some fraternity sorority. I'm in the same sorority as hopefully VP Kamala Harris. Yeah, I think Mike's my A Phi A brother, which is our brother fraternity. I appreciate your time. Thank you for listening to my story. I wish you all the best in your careers, your journeys, and all that you're doing. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. If I can ever be a resource, let me know or make an introduction on your behalf. I'd love to. And that's it. Good night.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Karla. We'll talk soon.
Okay, take care, Richard.
It was
Thank
awesome.
you, Karla.
Good luck with your cats, Demetria.
Thank you.
Look, take care.
Have a good evening.
You too.
Stay
Bye.
good.
Bye.
Thanks, Karla.
Bye.